Borderlands 3 just released a huge new update that brings with it some great Vault Hunter adjustments, a lot of changes to loads of the legendary items in the game, and some general bug fixes across the board. So in this video I'm going to be covering everything you need to know about this new update. So starting off this video today, let's cover Gearbox's description of why they made all of these new changes. Reading directly from their patch notes here, it states, "This week's Borderlands 3 hotfixes, which will be live on all platforms by or before 3 PM PDT today, adjust legendary gear across all manufacturers. Our goal with legendary gear is to enable a large variety of playstyles and builds for all characters. After looking through the data, we found that some of the pieces of legendary gear were greatly outperforming others and felt they were limiting builds instead of increasing them. In addition, some of the damage output of legendary gear limited the growth in combat engagements for the future, so we tuned everything to an acceptable median. We expect all Vault Hunters to be able to create amazing builds, and we want to support that with more ways to grow and reach those power levels." And then it jumps straight into these new changes, and starting off with the new Vault Hunter adjustments. It states, "The current state of Moses Iron Bear, Zane's Digiclone and Flak's pets have made players focus on other elements besides those Vault Hunters' fundamental action skills in the late game. While longer term solutions to scaling their damage is explored, we have boosted the health of the Iron Bear, the Digiclone and the pets to make them more viable. We will have more to say about the long-term solutions for these characters in the future." Now in terms of these statistics, Zane's Digiclone's health has now been increased by 100%. This is great for you Zane players out there, as his Digiclone was quite literally getting obliterated on modes like Mayhem 3 and True Vault Hunter mode. In addition to this, Moses Iron Bear and all of Flak's pets have had their health increased by 50%. Again, this is very good news for Flak and Mose players out there, and I'll be doing a bunch of testing soon to see how these action skills and pets hold up on the higher end modes of the game. And for the final talking point for the Vault Hunter section, we have a change to Zane's Salvation skill in the Hitman skill tree, where grenades will no longer give you the lifesteal effect of this skill. This was apparently a bug, and grenades were never meant to count towards the lifesteal, so they're pretty much putting a nerf on this specific skill. It will work the exact same way, just minus the grenades having the effect. In addition to the Vault Hunter changes, we also have a lot of buffs and nerfs to loads of the legendary items in Borderlands 3. Starting off with some of the Jacob's weaponry, we have a damage increase of 35% to the legendary Maggie pistol. You guys have no idea how happy I am that this has received a buff. The Maggie was one of my favourite weapons to use in Borderlands 2, and in general, I love using Jacob's pistols, but in this game, the Maggie heavily lacked in damage, causing players to use other Masher Jacob's pistols instead. So hopefully with this buff, the Maggie may actually be a viable weapon to use now. But in addition to this, the legendary Hellwalker shotgun, which most people refer to as the Doom shotgun, has had its damage reduced by 8%. I still feel this weapon will be great to use, but of course that is a small nerf there to the weapon itself. Anyway, moving on now to Maliwan weapons, and starting off we have the Westergun SMG. This has now received a damage increase of 25%. In addition to this, the ASMD sniper rifle has had a damage increase of 28%. I don't currently have this weapon, so I'm not sure how good this will now be. And then the final change for Maliwan weapons is a bad one for all of you out there who loved the Kutzman SMG, as this has now received a damage reduction of 25%. Personally, I think this will still be one of the best SMGs in the game due to the fact of how this weapon works, but man, a 25% decrease on this is pretty damn big. Anyway, now moving on to legendary Torg weapons, the Tribolt and Alchemist assault rifles have both had an increase in damage by 25%, and the Devil's Foursome has had a damage increase of 13%. And now we move into the bad part of the Torg section, and that is a huge nerf to the beloved Flak shotgun. The Flak now consumes the full magazine when fired, and the damage has had a pretty big reduction by 33%. Gearbox gave a little statement as to why they did this. It states, "The Flak was greatly outperforming other shotguns due to the number of projectiles and high rate of fire. We initially believed the resulting projectile spread would cause most of the explosions to miss the target, However, this turned out to be false, so we reduced the projectile damage and allowed the weapon to only fire once per magazine. This change encourages players to capitalize on different stat bonuses to maximize the weapon's damage output. Now this is big, like I'm not sure if the flakka will even be that good now with this change. The fact that you can only shoot once per magazine now will change the way people use this weapon. I'm just about fine with the damage decrease, but decreasing the damage and changing the weapon's ammo consumption may be a bit far. Again, more testing will have to be done, and I'll most likely do a video soon based around how effective or ineffective all of these changes have been. Anyway, for the final change to Torgue weaponry, we have a slight buff to the Laser Sploder, which has now had its projectile spawn rate increased by 0.4 seconds. Anyway, moving on now to TDR and Vladov weapons. Starting off, the TDR 10-gallon submachine gun has now had a damage increase of 8%. The Vladov Infinity Pistol has had a much needed damage increase of 40%. The Sickle Assault Rifle Shotgun Hybrid has had a reload speed increase of 25%. The Phasor Assault Rifle has had a damage increase of 15%. The legendary pistol known as the Magnificent has also had a damage increase of 25%. The Jericho Sniper has had a huge damage increase of 40%. The Lucian's Call accuracy and handling have now also been reduced, but there's no indication of to how much, and the beloved Lyuda Sniper Rifle has also received a nerf. In terms of the Lyuda, Gearbox again gave a small statement of why they changed this. It mentions the Lyuda's functionality is to split the projectile from 1 to 3 after a certain distance. It was reported that the original projectile was never destroyed in the process of splitting, so one projectile actually became 4. Addressing this concern effectively removed a full shot's worth of damage, which auto-corrects the base damage of the weapon. Since we increased all sniper rifle critical damage bonus in a previous hotfix, we have now reduced some of the critical damage bonus on the Lyuda. In terms of the statistics, the Lyuda's critical hit damage bonus has now been decreased by 30%. However, even with those changes, I still feel it will be one of the best snipers in the game. But again, they have put a pretty big nerf on the weapon overall. Anyway, moving on to the next section now, and there's still a lot more legendary item changes. Let's talk about Dahl, Children of the Vault, and Atlas weapons. Starting off with the Dahl Vanquisher SMG, which has now had a damage increase of 20%. The Children of the Vault Skexel submachine gun has now had its damage increased by 15%. The Moor Linoge, I've probably pronounced that wrong, but that has also had a damage increase of 20%. The Children of the Vault Pain is Power Assault Rifle has also had its damage increased by 25%, and the Atlas Ruby's Wrath Rocket Launcher has had its damage increased by 10%. A lot of percentage changes there across the board. I'm trying to get through them as quick as possible, so the video isn't crazy long. But in addition to this, we also do have some big changes to Hyperion weapons. Gearbox stated, "We found that a couple of the legendary Hyperion weaponry bypassed the Hyperion manufacturer playstyle too easily, making their bonuses greatly outweigh the penalties. For instance, the Butcher shotgun was drastically outperforming all metrics, and we chose to reduce the damage in order to keep the fast fire rate. So the Butcher has now had its accuracy and damage reduced by 25%. This is a pretty damn big nerf to the Butcher, and overall from these patch notes, it seems like they're trying to put a nerf to all of the great shotguns in the game. Talking of shotguns, and this one is actually a good one, the Conference Call has had a much needed damage increase of 15%. Hopefully that will be enough to put it on par with some of the other shotguns in the game. And then the final section for Hyperion is yet another goddamn nerf, but this time it's to the Crossroad SMG, which is one of the best SMGs in the game. They have now reduced the Crossroads accuracy, and it now fires 3 projectiles instead of 4, which of course will reduce its overall damage output. Again, while this weapon has been nerfed, I still feel like it will be one of the best SMGs in the game regardless. Now, aside from the weapon changes, we also have some huge changes to some of the grenades. To quote directly from Gearbox again here, it states, "The Hex and the Firestorm were calibrated to the wrong grenade modifier. These 2 grenades were envisioned to specialize by applying elemental damage over time effects to targets. Instead, they resulted in large amounts of damage, and the elemental damage over time effects were minimal. We realize this is a drastic change on both of these grenades, but we did not want to remove the spectacle of the grenade and focused on allowing their core identity to be emphasized instead of them continuing to just be high damage grenades. So the Hex grenade has now had a massive damage reduction of 70%, and the duration of the grenade's effects have now been reduced to 3 seconds. And the Firestorm grenade has also received a huge damage reduction of 70% as well. Now these are ridiculously high nerfs to these grenades, and even though their effects are cool and do a good amount of damage, I do feel that 70% may be a little too much, and this may result in other grenades rising to the top now, and these grenades being used way less often. Then finally, for the last part of the weapon section as a whole, we have a change to the elemental projector artifacts. For those of you who don't know, these are the artifacts that when you're affected by an element, your damage will increase by a substantial amount with that same element. And people were using these types of class mods to proc themselves before boss fights to deal a hell of a lot of increased damage. While the damage for this used to be a 183 bonus to elemental damage, and this has now been reduced by over 50% and now only deals 90% damage. This will still overall be worth using against boss fights, but either way, that again is a huge damage reduction there. And now for the final part of the patch notes, we have some bug fixes. To start, shield boosters were modified and are now set for auto pickup. About goddamn time. This is actually huge, and other shields that weren't so great that used to drop these boosters may actually be really good now. This is a feature that should have been implemented since the beginning, but I'm glad it's now been added. In addition to this, Psychos will now use their True Vault Hunter mode name in True Vault Hunter mode. They have also removed the optional rare spawn missions from your galaxy map progress. They have also addressed a reported bug where completely sane Sid didn't always become hostile when using flak. They addressed another reported bug where Ratch would not properly spawn during the Ratched Up mission, which potentially blocked the completion of that side mission. They also included a modification so Lilith would continue to move towards the door in Shiv's confession chamber during the From the Ground Up mission. This again was a bug that was halting the mission's progress. They included a modification so that Zane's digiclone will no longer spawn into the cage in the Cistern of Slaughter. This was somewhat of a farming trick people were using to get the red chest easily from this, by simply putting Zane's digiclone through the cage. So of course this will now no longer be possible. And then finally, they have now made it so that Iridium chests are no longer listed as red chests in the EchoCast extension on Sanctuary 3. And that's pretty much it for the video. These were a ton of crazy nerfs, some buffs, and many more changes. So let me know your thoughts on all of these in the comment section below. I'll be responding to a ton of you guys about this topic in general. And if you want to check out the top 5 best shields in Borderlands 3, be sure to click on this video on screen. Peace.